Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Jose from Southern Life. How's my YouTube family doing? Last video, you guys asked me about the haircut, and I'll tell you where I got it. Palm Beach Boulevard, right next to Terry Park. There's a little barbershop there, and there's some Puerto Ricans up in there that'll cut you up. All right, y'all. So I'm going to answer this question because a lot of people have been asking me this question. I think it's a really important question that isn't really being answered by a lot of the big YouTubers. So why you should never buy a house right off the bat when you move across state lines, especially if you have never lived there before. Your man right here made that mistake. Went across state lines to Alabama and I bought a house in a state I had never lived in a city I had never been to. Boy, was that a big mistake. Even though I bought a house for $65,000 and sold it for $138,000, so I doubled my money, it was still a huge mistake. I don't even want to know what it's got to feel like when you make that stupid mistake and lose money. But even though I doubled my money in theory, it was still a stupid mistake. And that's what this video is about. If you're moving to another state, you don't have to buy a house. Where us Americans got the notion to move across state lines and buying a house in a city you've never been to is the stupidest thing I have ever done, possibly, and heard of. And again, when I talk about stupidity, I'm not just pointing a finger at somebody else and saying you're stupid. Kind of looking at my mirror right now and looking at myself and saying, Jose, wow, you did something very stupid. And even though I made a lot of money, I doubled my money, which chances are you're not going to double your money for doing this. It's still stupid, and it still was a mistake. So I hope you're listening. If you are moving to another state, you need to rent. Take $6,000, $12,000. If you got family, kids, dogs, cats, horses, and ostriches, perhaps make it $18,000. Just grab a slice of that pie and rent before you buy. So once you buy a house, you have to wait 1 or even 2 years before you're able to sell it, which means even if you gain this much, you're going to pay taxes. It's going to shrink that profit considerably, especially if you do what I did, which is you don't pay taxes on your real estate. Okay? So if you don't want to pay taxes on real estate, or you have a huge sum of money that you've kind of fumbled your way up into in the real estate, you haven't paid taxes on it yet. When you buy a house in a place and it doesn't work out and you decide to sell it, you're now going to be taxed on that whole amount. But if you have cash money, you're going to spend it. This truck we're in right now, this trip to Michigan we took, having cash money is dangerous. Not everybody has discipline to have cash money. And believe me, when there's money, you'll find something to spend it on voluntarily or not. It's a little scary having $200,000 in the bank, $100,000 in the bank, $120,000 in the bank, $400,000 in the bank. It's a little intimidating to have that kind of money just sitting there. And this talk of inflation just makes you even more scared. At the end of the day, inflation or not, I really strongly advise you, if you're moving across state lines, do not buy a house in a place you've never been to, in a city you've never stepped foot in. You have to rent first. Budget for it. If I had rented in Alabama, perhaps I'd be better off now. Now, we knew prices were going to go up. Now we know prices are going to go like this or like this. So there's definitely no rush to do it now. And I've helped a lot of people. I made this mistake, and almost on a weekly basis I talk to somebody who's, for some reason, the idea goes in their head, I'm going to leave Florida. I'm going to leave New York. Leave California. I'm going to run somewhere cheaper. And many times, the grass is not always greener on the other side. In fact, many times, like in my case, you end up coming back to the place you left. And then you come back in a worse situation because now you don't have the real estate that you used to have. And now the place that you were at keeps climbing. So now you're not going to be able to hop back in to the same place you were at, because now the place that you were at appreciated in value. So you can find yourself in a situation where now it's more expensive to move back to where you were, and the place you moved to isn't as hyped up as it was a few months ago. So now you're losing here, and then you're moving back to the place you came from and ending up in a worse situation than where you were before. I understand wanting to leave a place you don't like. I know what it feels like to leave Florida. I can imagine what it's like to leave California, to leave New York, because I've been in your footprints. I've been there. I've decided I don't want part of this madness anymore. I needed a break from it. It's exhausting. But before you do it, at least step foot in that place first. At least spend a month, 2 weeks. Is 2 weeks really going to make all the difference in the world? Is there really never going to be another property hit the market 2 weeks later? You know, and even after you make your down payment and this and that, and you got 2 or 3 weeks before closing to think about it, and you're there and you're starting to see the signs that you made a bad decision, you're still going to act on it because you've already sold your place and you're kind of in tunnel vision, and at that point you're not seeing a way out. Please hear me out. Don't buy into this idea that you have to buy a property right off the bat if you're moving across state lines. If you're moving across state lines, you need 6 months, maybe a year, maybe 9 months. 6 months to a year. You need 6 months to a year to touch the ground and think about what you're going to do. And that might cost you $10,000. It might cost you $20,000. It might cost you more. It depends on how many family members you got, how many mouths you got to feed. But trust me, you're going to wish you had taken those 6 months that I didn't take to acclimate. You want to hop from point A to point B. You want to make that thing happen right off the bat. You are excited to get off of this bus and hop on this one. You're ready for a change in lifestyle. But before you do it, hop on a plane, take a drive, and make sure that you like the place you're going to. And let me tell you something, because I have been in 28 states in the last year. I have seen America, at least the southeast side of it, some of the north of it, not all of it. I've seen a lot of it. I've probably spent $50,000 traveling America in the last year. I've seen a lot of it. And let me tell you, even after all the places me and Katie have been to, and all the little towns and big cities we've been to, moving is hard. Knowing where you want to go is hard. If I left here right now, the first time I did, I was blind. See, I had never been. I had been in Alabama one time or twice, and I landed in Auburn and I liked it. So that's all I knew about Alabama. I just knew that I was in Auburn one time and I really liked it. I thought it was country and rural and pretty, and I liked it. I went to Auburn. I had a friend that lived in Auburn, and I liked it. So I liked it, and that's all I knew about Alabama. I didn't know too much about Alabama. Know a whole lot about it now. Didn't back then. Do now. So with all that, you're going to regret the decisions you're making today. We have seen so many places. And let me tell you, there are not too many places that I would just feel like even recently, we just went to Oklahoma City. Katie was on air. Look, honey, Oklahoma City's in the center of the country, and apartments are $900 for a luxury apartment for $900 a month. We ran up to Oklahoma City and we saw it. And let me tell you, I could have left Florida in a truck and trailer and landed in Oklahoma City, rented an apartment there, and I could have found out the hard way why I wouldn't like it. But I found out the easy way. Hopped in a car, drove, saw it, came back, thought about it. You couldn't convince him. You couldn't pay me to move there now. But sitting at home in front of that computer, those $900 apartments a month sure seemed attractive. So things on the computer may look very beautiful and attractive, but there's a whole nother world out there called real life. It's gonna make you change your mind about how pretty that place looks. We've traveled a lot, we've seen a lot, and there's not too many places that I would really like. Houston, Texas. Katie was like all crazy about Houston, so I keep taking her back to Houston. Like I think 3 or 4 months in a row, whatever. We've been to Houston a lot. We've seen Texas a lot. And it doesn't seem as romantic now as the first time we saw it. So, the road you're on is a slow and steady climb to be eventually where you're going to want to be. Things are not going to happen overnight. If it was easy, it wouldn't be worth having. How you can speed up that process, I'm not sure, but it is a slow ride. Saving, growing is a long ride. It's a long process. And if you try to take shortcuts, you're going to find out there's a little bit of danger in those little alleyways. So before you move across state lines, I recommend that you rent a place for 6 months. Or even before you even move, leave the place you're in now. Hop on a plane, hop on a bus, get over there and spend 2 weeks over there. I just don't understand why we don't just spend 2 weeks somewhere. Why don't we just grab your family and take 2 weeks and spend it in that town in vicinity, come back, think about it for a month before you make that decision? Why don't we do that? Because we know there's dangers on the other side and we don't want to accept it. Now, in my case, I knew I was a YouTuber, this would be some great life experience, and I wasn't afraid. I knew there was definitely risk involved. Everybody I knew was like, you've lost your mind moving to Alabama. I knew it was crazy. I wanted the life experience, and I gained it. And I almost lost it too. So just think about all that. Think about all that. Before you go, if you're in California or Washington State and you want to move to the East Coast, bring your family. Spend 2 weeks. Spend 2 weeks in that little town. And don't just go there and see attractions and stuff. Go to restaurants. Go to the mall. Go to the county. Pretend you're pulling a permit. Go to the county and say, I want to install a fence in this house I'm thinking about buying, and see what they tell you. Just kind of pretend you're already living there for 2 weeks, okay? Pretend you're living there for 2 weeks. And see how it goes. Get on the roads and commute those traffics. And don't go during the best part of the year. Like, we went to Dallas, it was 110 degrees. We went to Oklahoma City, it was 110 degrees. When we went to Michigan, it was 14 below. Not 14 below, it was 14. Felt like 14 below to me. Go during the worst part of the year and spend 2 weeks there and see what you think. I don't understand why we don't do this. Looking back on my situation, there was a lot of pressure. I mean, I sold my house in Florida when everything was going like this. Everybody was going nuts. The worst time. I mean, time was definitely an issue there. But is it really an issue right now? It's not anymore. Take your time. If you're thinking about moving across to another state, to another city, get on a plane and spend 2 weeks there with your family. It ain't gonna hurt you. Even before, renting 6 months is a good option. But an even better option is just to hop on a plane, go over there and spend 2 weeks over there. And spend 2 weeks eating at restaurants, walking around downtown. You guys see how we do on our YouTube channels. Just do that. Drive around. Try to find the worst part of the city and see what the worst parts of the city might look like. You might have to end up working there once in a while, Yeah, that's my advice. Don't just hop on that bus. Don't try to get from point A to point B too quick. Slow it down. Travel. If you're not in a condition to get up and travel for 2 weeks, you're not in a condition to move. I guarantee it, man.